You know, when someone says to me, I think of Alex McLeish, I think, right, great player, really successful manager, great noise up. Because every player I speak to said you were always at the wind-up with them. They were actually on DEFCON 1, and you probably weren't the only one. There were so many of them in there.
Aye, no, it was great. You know, Gordon was incredible with the sarcasm and that, and he was so funny. You know, they say, what's it they say about sarcasm? It's the lowest form of wit, but the greatest form of intelligence. and so that was Ree Strax, and but there was others, you know, kind of joined in and throwing wee hand grenades in now and again, and the dressing room was vibrant, and you know. Peter Weir also was one of Sir Alex's great players. Peter and I went to school together.
Wow.
In Barhead.
He wasn't a bad swap, was he?
What a player, honestly. Peter, two-footed, a bit like the kind of, if you go to the modern day, the loud drops, you know, that kind of equality. Yeah,
I mean, two quick points on that. I mean, I thought Scan was a great player. I thought Ian Scanlon was magic, wasn't he?
Well, Dingus would probably tell you that, you know, every time he ran in the box, did they play I'm trying to
remember the time they played.
They played together. Or anyway, whoever our strikers were, they were always saying Scan, because he always checked back. They'd go again, so they'd go again, and he'd check back. They'd come back, he'd go again. Put that ball in the box, you know. Yeah. And I'm sure Dingus was.
Yeah, he was.
You know, he was. Yeah. Dingus was in the end of that, and I'm sure he moaned about it a few times. And but Scan was a very mercurial player and, you know, exciting, you know.
Yeah. And with that in mind, you know, even before we get to that Cup Winners' Cup season, suddenly he's managed to break the stranglehold, and he had that. Sir Alex had that psychology. Did you sense that it was just that man management to instill the belief, to create that siege mentality?
Yeah, because you know he was saying, he was always talking about the West of Scotland press. I mean, that's not like as if it's not common knowledge. Everybody knows that now. Back in the day when you know, other players have spoken about it for years, that there was that was his stance in the dressing room, and they all hate you down there, you know, and just extra motivation, and you know, we started to get that into our genes, you know. Yeah.
Did you respond to him in that? Here's the great line. When I said to John McMaster, "Did you get the hairdryer?" He went, "No, I get the furnace." Hairdryer would run out of power, he said. I get the furnace. How did you respond to it? Did you get the hairdryer?
Yeah, many times. I mean, maybe with two hands I could probably get into the second hand and say maybe 6 times or something like that. But Willie was maybe lower, and the creative players, you know, he had set to us with the creative players, because he just wanted them to produce brilliance, you know, all the time, and you know, we obviously you can't be perfect, but we had pretty close to brilliance.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I can remember the run from him on the Easter Road pitch when they finally broken the stranglehold of Rangers and Celtic, won the title, and then with that, the team evolves, and suddenly you've got players, young players in there, a great mix of a wee bit of experience as well. Suddenly you're in a situation where, you know, you're contesting cups, you're contesting League Cups with Dundee United, you're finding yourself in finals against Rangers.
Yeah, we in 82, I think, the first by Gordon Smith, Rangers scored first. Gordon Dale, Gordon Smith ran past me, says he was never winning Glasgow, and at the end of the game, the first person I looked for was Big Gordon.
Of course, when I think of cup finals,
I kid Gordon on to this day, you know. I keep reminding him of that one.
When I think of cup finals, though, what a goal he scored!
I know. I was, you know, I've seen one similar in the weekend, and I thought, wow, that's top bin, you know. And I actually went on that Soccer AM a few years ago with Fenners, you know, and I thought they're going to make me, you know, shoot into the goals.
The goals, yeah.
And I thought, I've got my Brogues on. I didn't have my trainers on. So rewind, and the Brogues put the ball in the tap bin.
Brilliant. And the funny thing is, though, did you not start out in midfield, though?
I was I was my last days at the boys' clubs, Glasgow United. I was playing kind of centre back, sweeper, each kind of role. I was taking a height, kind of 5 or 6 inches, from 14 to 17, 16. And I was gradually moving back, so I was playing kind of centre back role with United, Glasgow United, in my last games. But the boss, I did play midfield as a younger player, and at school, and centre forward, primary school.
Right.
So that was the days of Peter Weir and I first kind of hooking up. So the midfield role, Sir Alex said one day, I want you to be a scarfer in Tommy Burns' net. You're playing midfield, because Willie Garner and Willie Miller were centre backs at the time, and I guessed that was, I've got to man mark Tommy out the game. and it wasn't there was no felt bad fouls or anything like that. No filthy tricks, but it was I tried to stop Tommy from doing what he did really well. Yeah.
How special was Willie Miller for you? Because you've already mentioned the great thing about him was he had that ability to talk you through a game. And we always thought he also had that great ability to referee a game, because he was on everybody's case, wasn't he?
That he's famous for that, isn't he? He'll be renowned for that referee thing, the Aberdeen's 12th man. But he was, a good talker. He was, he wasn't like severe and harsh. It was more give you a look if you wanted doing the right thing. But it was more that he just seemed to be always in the right place. And we had the system was, I'll let you go and get the headers and I'll sweep them up.
Sweep up behind you.
If you miss anything, I'm behind you.
Yeah.
And sure enough, the head waiter was there waiting every time that I had a misheader or didn't win it, a flick on or whatever. He was reading it, So, but he really was, a fantastic individual in that particular role in that particular era.
Yeah, and the amazing thing about it was, apart from anything else, Fergie's demands on the team were incredible. I mean, I have to tell you, Mark McGhee tells me a great story where you and him went for sweeties and the bus left without you.
That's right, I know, this was, we couldn't believe it. We got to Pittodrie and what's the bus? A couple of minutes late, and the boss had gone, so I don't know, we didn't have mobile phones. How did we get in touch? And anyway, I think the secretary or something says, your boss says you've got to drive down and catch the bus, catch up with it. So I think it was Forfar, wasn't it?
Yeah, you eventually caught up with it.
and we on the bus, and you're kind of, really, can I say shit myself?
Yeah.
And walking on the bus as to what he's going to do. And as soon as we got on the bus, we kind of went to engage with him. He said, get up the bloody back. Get on the bus, used to, he's a find. And, so we had to think about a fine while we were playing football that same day. But the one thing was for sure that we had to put on good performances that particular day.
Yeah, and of course cup finals, because I think the great thing, when I'm remembering all these stories that were coming through, Gordon's the day that he had a rant when he said only Miller and McLeish played well in the cup final, I think the boys, they were absolutely gobsmacked by him, weren't they?
Oh God, aye, because I'd milked it a wee bit with the base of the cup. I went round the stadium, I went in to see, the invalid section, the people in the wheelchairs, and post photos and that, and it must have been 10 minutes after the players all get in. I went in with the base of the cup and opened the door, morgue, it's really, really quiet. And what the hell, what's up?
Aye.
We Gordy, fucking him. The boss had, by that time, had a blast at them, and had gone into the Hampden showers and that area.
Yeah.
And he says, well, what happened? The boss says, only you and Willie done well. I said, oh, that's all right then. I'm all right, Jack.
Yeah.
You know, it was, and to be fair to the gaffer, he called us all in the morning and apologised for it.
Yeah, it was crazy. Gordon says to me that they reckoned that it was just you and Willie on a motorbike in a sidecar with a cup for the presentation in Aberdeen, because no one else deserved it.
Oh, no, I know.
You have phoned them a few times though and said you've still got that medal, haven't you?
Yeah, well, listen, it was, you know, one of these moments that go down in history, and you know, the thing was we won, and of course the team were brilliant, and you know, Willie and I sometimes we had brilliant rapport in terms of with the whole defence, and saying, you know, we keep the ball out the net, and that is our vital role in this particular football club, and we pitch in with a goal now and again, a set piece or something, but our main job is the opposition nil.
Yeah.
And you know, obviously can't do it all the time, but and it gives everybody, all the creative players, a chance to win the game for us, and we had some brilliant creative players.
And with that in mind, you as a manager will know better than anybody, building a successful side is all about the spine. You've got Leighton, great goalie, you've got you two at the heart of the defence. You've talked about creative players. When you looked ahead of you, what filled you with confidence? What players did you look at and think, oh, magic, we've got them. You know, if we can keep that nil, these guys will win it for us.
Yeah, and you know, Stuart Kennedy came in one game at half time, at Pittodrie, I think it was, and I don't know if Dingus would have told you this one, but we came in at half time and Stuart is like, guys, you're allowed to score if you want, you know, up front there. We can't keep the ball out the net forever at the back. This is Kennedy, you know, and you're allowed to score. And it triggered the boss, and he had a goal, a blast, and Mark McGhee, Dingus had done a strop and took his tap off and says, oh, I'm okay, I'm not going out of the second half. And so we're looking at the bench and that, and but we're lost the mighty McGee, and all of a sudden the boss says to Archie, hey, get him back out of the showers, he's back on. So I went, McGee, I'm not going on, you know, I'm not going on. And so he goes back out the second half, and we won 1-0, guess who scored? McGee. Yeah. So we did keep the ball out of the net, but we did also get Stuart Kennedy's demands that he scored, that somebody up front scores, and Dingus did.
And ahead of you, when I look at that team and I think of the quality, yes, Strachan, obviously, once he'd done the swap deal, Peter Weir's in there. The much, I think, underrated Doogie Bell.
Yeah, Doogie was you know, absolute brilliant dribbler, and you just could not get the ball off him. And the game in Munich was the 0-0. I'm sure that night Doogie took enormous pressure off everybody with his mazy runs and stuff, and that was a real feature of his skills. What a tremendous technician and manipulator of the ball. Yeah.
As you get ready for the anniversary, I think if anything, you know, you always hope that all the teams there will be a tremendous amount of emotion with no Tattie there. I mean, I think everybody would be thinking, it'd be great to see Neil there.
I know the youngest of the squad, and he was such a wonderful bloke, and I kept in touch with him all throughout the years. When I was up to Aberdeen, gave him a shout, and you know, to lose Tattie, quite emotional to lose your youngest player and who'd done so much for the club. And when I first went to Pittodrie as a young boy, I saw him out in the car park training, and I seen the curls. Playing, he'd headed tennis, I think it was, and I'm saying, God, look at that guy. I says, who's that? See, in the team, and they says, well, he's a young guy coming through, 16 or 17 at the time. And I said, he looks phenomenal, beautiful, technical player.
Yeah.
And because Willie and I were centre defence and had formed, we had such a great partnership, Tattie wasn't going to get in that position, and he turned into a kind of enforcer in midfield, and a driver, he was really good on the ball as well. And when everybody had tipped him to be like a Franz Beckenbauer centre back, and Willie and I kind of made sure that nobody else was going to take our positions. And that was what I remember about Neil. In that car park that day, I said, that's some level of young footballer, and we're going to have to up our game to be able to play for this team and make this club even better. Yeah,
and one of my favourite memories is the fact that the boys all tell me that Fergie had him 1 week like a coiled spring as Celtic were coming up to Pittodrie. It's got to be the fastest booking of all time on Charlie Nicholas, hasn't it?
Oh, aye. He was brainwashed that whole week, and every morning I think that he told the story every time he was up on stage, and every morning the shout was Cooper office now. That whole week, Tuesday, Cooper office now, and it was Charlie Nicholas, right? Go to put the grips on him, and every single day. So I'm saying, well, we'll sort out Charlie when he comes into our territory, Willie and I. But I'd no idea that Charlie was going to get blutered by Tattie in the first 5 seconds of the game. Charlie was quite quiet after that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not surprised.
He softened him up for Willie and I.
The run, I mean, Sion was just a precursor to what was about to unfold. I mean, you absolutely battered them. I think the job was done and dusted, and then it's Dinamo Tirana. Was there a sense, I mean, obviously domestic dominance and surprising everybody and winning the league would have been the thing that rocked everybody, and everybody would have taken notice of it. Was there a sense in your mind that European football you could make an inroads? I always think that the greatest learning curve for you guys was, maybe getting, for example, that pasting off Liverpool.
Yeah. I know. You took the words out of my mouth. That's at that time, I didn't think, okay, we're going to dominate Europe because we get thrashed off Liverpool.
Yeah.
But it was a German game, I think maybe a year later or something, and we'd lost, and I'd seen how shattered the boss was. I lashed out the dressing room, and he was kind of just hovering in the corner with his head down, and I thought, boss, I said, boss, we better go. And imagine me trying to cheer the boss up, but it was more that I think we're getting better in Europe with every game. And I didn't say we're going to win a European trophy, but I kind of just felt that we were getting better and better. And the Liverpool experience, it may have been in Frankfurt or something like that, and getting the pacing for Liverpool. I mean, the Scottish boys in that Liverpool team, they wound them up to fever pitch, because I think I think Graham and Hansen Kenny thought a lot of the dressing room was a lot blasé about facing us, but so we cannot lose to this these Scots,
Yeah.
And they battered us, but it was a great experience, and And Kenny gave me a dig in the guts when I was blocking him, trying to block him on every run, you know, and he's half the boys. If VAR was in now, they'd been half.
and you know, that part that you mentioned there, that psychology of the players, and you maybe saying to the gaffer, hey, we're getting better, we're on the move, you know. That year, we're in 83 now, you've got a team that's looking special, you've got players that can come off the bench as well.
We had a great team, and Stuart Kennedy obviously didn't make it, and but he was, you know, put on the bench, and a great gesture for the manager, and we knew that we could bring anybody on, you know, to and make the team even stronger, or if there was people flagging a wee bit. But I don't know, it was amazing. It's just to think that, you know, the night before with the quiz, we was taking our mind after the actual final, making sure everybody slept well, and then to beat the mighty Real Madrid. It still seems like a far-fetched story, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely it does. And again, one of those stories that, you know, game by game, stage by stage, you're looking at the team, the way they're playing, the goals they're getting, the way you defended. You talked about the highs of Munich. I mean, was Tirana and Poznan, were they tough? In your memory, did you have any special game plan insight into it, or was it just a case that the team was growing in confidence and you knew what to do?
Yeah, it was more a case of, at some stage we knew we could handle these teams, and it was just kind of as if it was ingrained in your brain, you know, that they could be difficult, but there is no way that they will stop us. And of course, when you meet the big teams like Bayern, and then we're up a level again, Real Madrid in the final. But the teams previously, then they were sticky, you know.
Yeah. Apart from Waterschei.
Waterschei was, you know, the brilliant home performance, 5-1, and I remember Sir Alex used to invite the old pensioners in to watch training and stuff, and bring them in the back. There was a wee room at the back where he gave them tea and that, and one of them was waiting on me the day after the 5-1, and he said, that away goal could be dodgy.
Yeah, motivating yourself for the return leg was probably the biggest thing, because there would have been that psychology of the job's done.
Yeah, I know. It was, but yeah, we'd gone there and probably didn't do it, because we never lost a game up to that point.
To that point, yeah.
Game in Belgium, and again, fast forward, and that was the stadium where I was coaching Genk.
Yeah, it's amazing how these things go round as you know, full circle. Just on that point, you mentioned the away game where Doogie Bell and the team played so well against Bayern Munich. What's your memories of the game at Pittodrie, because you played such a key part in it as well? You know, Aberdeen, classic for, if it wasn't a free kick that he's had practiced, it would be your late run into the penalty box as well, in Gothenburg, as well as what happened against Munich. I mean, what was your memories of that night? Was there a genuine sense, well, you know, we can take them?
Well, it was just a kind of preaching for the boss in terms of, you've got to win this game. Yeah. It doesn't matter what the score is, you've got to get one more goal than them. Because of the 0-0 draw and the possibility of opposition winning in away goals. Yeah. And that was the mantra all the way through.
Whose fault was it that they didn't pick up Augenthaler?
Well, we knew the big one was capable of the long rangers, but he's a good player, and good players manipulate themselves into a situation where they try and get at least one chance at that, and we'd done really well over 2 legs to stop him, and only getting one shot and unfortunately it was a goal, but it was a goal that just made us say that we've got to get a goal back and then get ahead of them.
Yeah.
And the main thing is get one more goal than them, and that was the innermost thing I felt in my head.
Yeah. Have you ever witnessed an atmosphere like it?
No, it was Pittodrie was absolutely rocking, and okay, there was the groans and moans when you lose the goals, you go behind, and people, I'm sure, in the commentary were saying, "Well, that's it now," and I think Big Jock Brown.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
And it's all over now. And Bayern, they'll not get back, and the absolute determination of that team that I played in, and Sir Alex built was phenomenal. The determination just to say, well, hey, we get a goal and then we get another one.
Yeah.
We got to win.
Yeah. Within 2 minutes though?
I know. Yeah, well, that was kind of pretty much frightening. But you see the ball getting carried up to the halfway line. The boys are. I think we actually did it when we got the third goal as well.
Yeah.
I think we ran back with it again, thinking
let's get a
make it
fourth.
Yeah, just to make sure. But that time, that nowadays you'd be saying, right, kick the ball into the stands.
Yeah, kill time.
Kill time.
Yeah.